Michael Philip Jagger was born on July 26, 1943, in Dartford, England. He grew up in a middle-class family, far away from the glamour of rock stardom. His father was a teacher and his mother worked as a hairdresser. From an early age, young Mick loved music. He would sing in the school choir and listen to American blues and rock and roll records. But his parents expected him to have a steady career, not to chase wild dreams. At Dartford Grammar School, Mick showed a sharp mind. He later studied at the London School of Economics, planning to enter business or politics. Yet deep down, his true passion was music. He carried records of Muddy Waters and Chuck Berry everywhere, learning the moves and sounds of his idols. His ambition was quietly building. Mick's life took a big turn in 1961 when he met Keith Richards at a train station. They had once been childhood classmates but lost touch. Keith noticed the blues records under Mick's arm, and that moment reconnected them. It was a chance meeting that would spark one of the most legendary partnerships in music history. Jagger and Richards bonded instantly over their love of blues. Soon they teamed up with guitarist Brian Jones, pianist Ian Stewart, and drummer Charlie Watts. By 1962, the Rolling Stones were born. Unlike polished pop groups, they embraced rawness. Their music was louder, dirtier, and filled with rebellious energy. Mick quickly became the face of the band. With his sharp looks, swaggering stage presence, and magnetic charisma, he drew crowds in. The Stones began performing in small clubs around London, playing covers of blues standards. Word spread fast. They weren't like the Beatles, who charmed audiences with clean-cut smiles. The Stones were dangerous, seductive, and full of attitude. By 1963, they landed a manager, Andrew Loog Oldham, who rebranded them as the Bad Boys of rock. Oldham encouraged Mick and Keith to write their own songs. Their first big hit, I Can't Get No Satisfaction, in 1965, became an anthem of frustration and rebellion. It shot them into superstardom. The Rolling Stones weren't just a band, they were a cultural force. And at the center of it all was Mick Jagger. His voice sneering through the speakers, his lips curling, his hips moving in a way that shocked traditional Britain. A new era had arrived. By the late 1960s, Mick Jagger had become more than just a singer. He was a symbol of rebellion. His stage performances were electric. He strutted, danced, and commanded attention in a way few frontmen ever could. His moves blurred the lines between masculine toughness and sensual playfulness, challenging social norms. His style drew comparisons to Elvis Presley, but Mick pushed it further. He used his whole body as part of the performance. Fans screamed, critics complained, and the media labeled him dangerous. But Mick thrived on controversy. He once said that rock music was meant to be shocking, and he made sure of it. At the same time, his lyrics captured the unrest of the era. Songs like Painted Black and Street Fighting Man reflected the turbulence of the 1960s, from war protests to counterculture movements. Mick's voice became the soundtrack of a generation demanding change. But fame came with chaos. Mick was constantly in the tabloids for his relationships, wild parties, and clashes with authority. In 1967, he was famously arrested for drug possession along with Keith Richards. Instead of destroying the band, the scandal only made them more iconic. Mick had become both a rock star and a rebel leader, someone parents warned their kids about, but the kids adored anyway. In 1969, the Rolling Stones organized a free concert at Altamont Speedway in California. It was meant to be their version of Woodstock, a celebration of peace and music. Instead, it turned into one of the darkest nights in rock history. The Hells Angels motorcycle gang was hired as security, paid in beer. As the night went on, violence erupted, the crowd was restless, and fights broke out. During the Stones' performance, chaos reached its peak. Tragically, a young fan, Meredith Hunter, was killed in front of the stage. Mick Jagger was deeply shaken. He had walked into Altamont thinking it was going to be a joyful event. Instead, it symbolized the end of the 1960s dream of peace and love. Critics blamed the Stones, saying they represented the darker side of rock excess. For Mick, it was a wake-up call. He realized that rock and roll carried enormous power and enormous risk. Altamont haunted him, but it also hardened him. The band survived, while many others of that era crumbled. Mick learned that to last in the music world, he would need control, discipline, and the ability to reinvent himself. And that's exactly what he did. The 1970s became the Rolling Stones' golden age, and Mick Jagger was at the center of it. Albums like Sticky Fingers, 1971, and Exile on Main St. 1972 defined rock at its peak. Mick's voice was gritty, his lyrics edgy, and his presence unstoppable. The Stones toured relentlessly, with Mick leading like a ringmaster. Dressed in flamboyant costumes, he ran across stages, throwing himself into every performance. Fans couldn't take their eyes off him. Critics may have mocked his moves, but he didn't care. Mick had become the ultimate showman. At the same time, his personal life was just as dramatic. He married Bianca Perez Mora Macias in 1971 in a star-studded wedding, but his relationships often grabbed as many headlines as his music. By mid-decade, the Stones were declared the greatest rock and roll band in the world. Yet Mick wasn't satisfied with just music. He dipped into acting, appearing in films like Performance and Ned Kelly. Though his movie career never matched his music success, it showed his restless creativity. Through it all, Mick proved he wasn't just surviving the 70s. He was thriving. While many stars burned out, he kept moving forward, always adapting, always reinventing. The late 1970s brought challenges. The punk movement exploded, dismissing bands like the Stones as dinosaurs. Mick knew they needed to evolve, so the Stones embraced disco and funk influences with songs like Miss You, showing they could still dominate the charts. But tension grew inside the band. Keith Richards struggled with drug addiction, often clashing with Mick. At times, their friendship seemed broken beyond repair. Mick was ambitious, pushing the band toward new styles, while Keith wanted to stick to raw rock. Their fights nearly tore the Stones apart. Outside the band, Mick's life remained in the spotlight. He separated from Bianca, his high-profile affairs with models and actresses feeding tabloids endlessly. Yet despite the chaos, Mick kept the Stones alive. He knew the band was bigger than any scandal. By 1981, they proved their staying power with the Tattoo You album and an explosive world tour. Once again, Mick Jagger stood on stage, larger than life, reminding everyone why he was rock's greatest frontman. By the 1980s, Mick Jagger was no longer just a singer. He was a global icon and savvy businessman. He realized early on that rock bands needed more than music to survive. Under his guidance, the Rolling Stones became one of the most financially successful acts in history. He organized massive world tours, pioneering stadium concerts that set new standards for rock shows. The band's stage productions grew bigger, filled with lights, screens, and theatrics. Fans weren't just coming for music, they were coming for an unforgettable experience. Mick also explored a solo career, releasing albums like She's the Boss in 1985. While his solo work never reached the same heights as the Stones, it showed his drive to carve out his own identity. Meanwhile, the tension with Keith Richards remained high. In 1985, Keith accused Mick of trying to leave the band behind. For a moment, the Stones seemed doomed. But when they reunited for 1989's Steel Wheels tour, it was clear. Mick and Keith might fight like brothers, but they couldn't live without each other. Their chemistry was too powerful. The 1990s cemented Mick Jagger as more than just a rock star. He became a cultural icon. The Stones released Voodoo Lounge in 1994, winning a Grammy and launching one of the biggest tours ever. Mick, now in his 50s, still moved across the stage with the energy of a man half his age. People began asking, how does he keep going? His dedication to fitness, diet, and discipline became legendary. While many of his peers faded, Mick stayed sharp. Off stage, he continued to fascinate the world. His relationships, children, and lifestyle filled headlines, but he seemed untouched by scandal fatigue. He was Mick Jagger. Controversy was part of his brand. By the end of the decade, he had become a Knight of the British Empire, honored by the Queen in 2003 for his services to music. Some criticized him, saying, "The ultimate rebel shouldn't accept a royal title," but Mick didn't care. He had always done things his own way. As the 2000s and 2010s rolled on, Mick Jagger defied expectations. Most rock stars his age retired or slowed down, but Mick kept performing. The Stones continued touring, selling out stadiums across the globe. His energy on stage remained unmatched. In 2019, at age 75, Mick underwent heart surgery. Fans feared it might end his career, but just weeks later he posted a video of himself dancing, proving he was back. The world was stunned. Mick Jagger seemed unstoppable. He also kept recording new music, collaborating with artists across genres. Unlike many older musicians, he embraced modern sounds while staying true to his rock roots. Mick refused to become a nostalgia act. He was still evolving. Today, Mick Jagger stands as one of the greatest figures in music history. From a boy in Dartford to the face of the world's biggest rock band, his journey is nothing short of legendary. He has influenced generations of performers with his style, his moves, and his relentless spirit. He turned rock and roll into a spectacle, proving it was more than music. It was culture, rebellion, and art. At over 80 years old, Mick Jagger still performs with the Rolling Stones. His voice, his charisma, and his drive continue to amaze fans. He has lived through scandals, heartbreaks, triumphs, and tragedies, yet he never stopped moving forward. Mick once said, "I'd rather be dead than sing Satisfaction when I'm 45. But today, decades later, he still sings it, and the world still sings along. Because Mick Jagger isn't just a rock star, he's proof that music, passion, and rebellion never grow old.